St Paul's Cathedral is world famous, but few realise that there are over 40 other churches and places of worship squeezed in between the city's towers of commerce, all within this very small area of the square mile. I'm in Paternoster Square, which is a site of religious meaning, but is also where the London Stock Exchange happens to be. It's a location that shows the unique interaction between faith and commerce in the City of London. This exhibition from my book Faith in the City of London is the result of over 4 years of photographing and discovering the city's vibrant spiritual life that stretches out into many faiths. There's an extraordinary depth and breadth. For example, I found a very modern side to worship in the high-tech international headquarters of the Salvation Army, where staff hold morning prayers in a chapel filled with light reflected through a sky wall of glass panels. In contrast, a short walk away, I discovered Romanians of the Christian Orthodox faith worshipping by candlelight in the ancient Anglican church of St Dunstan in the west. Here, over 400 people attended very family-focused Sunday services lasting several hours. Judaism has a long history in the city and has been practiced for over 300 years at Bevis Synagogue. This beautiful ancient building still hosts major ceremonial services for Anglo Jewry, as well as family celebrations such as this wedding. There is no Gurdwara temple in the square mile, but the Sikh business community find the space they need for weekday prayers within the unique calm of the large Bedouin tent at the St Ethelburga's Centre for Reconciliation and Peace. For Muslims, there is no mosque within the city, so Friday prayers are held in hired rooms such as here, in the worshipful company of Wax Chandler's Livery Hall. Prayer mats are carefully laid out, the Imam is mic'd up so that everyone can hear him, and workers from nearby offices stream in to fill 2 floors of these grand staterooms near Guildhall. Before the pandemic, there was regular worship happening in many of the city churches, from daily communions to weddings to festival services and prayer meetings. I was able to capture some wonderful moments of drama. A good example of this was on the evening of Holy Saturday, when the first fire of Easter was lit in the cloister at St Bartholomew the Great, before the Paschal candle was carried through for the first Mass. For a surprise of a lighter nature, I followed the whole congregation of St Bride's Church out onto Fleet Street early on Easter Sunday morning to capture their tradition of an egg-rolling competition down this famous thoroughfare, led by the Reverend Canon Dr. Alison Joyce. And then there were the beautiful quiet moments of drama during daily services. Here, Father Chris Vipers prepares the Eucharist at the high altar in St Mary Moorfields, the only Roman Catholic church within the square mile. The city churches have always reached out to the financial community surrounding them, not an easy task in this fast-moving, work-focused world of the square mile. A good example is the City Pastors, led by Tony Thomas, chaplain to the City of London Police. I was able to photograph this trained group of church volunteers patrolling the late-night city streets, talking and listening to people, and offering care and support to those at risk or in need, ranging from bottles of water to philosophical discussion. Physical moments of empathy like this may not be possible in these difficult times dominated by COVID-19. But I'm hoping that this exhibition will be a timely reminder of how important faith is in the life of the square mile, and how it will play a vital role in shaping the city's future.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wendy Hyde, and I'm chair of the City of London's Culture, Heritage and Libraries Committee. My role this afternoon is to welcome everyone to this virtual event. Our starting point is the exhibition on Faith in the City, which, as you've just seen, is being shown initially at Paternoster Square and will subsequently move to Aldgate Square, where it will be from the 29th of October to the 27th of November. The photographs in the exhibition were taken by Niki Gorick and reveal the square mile's vibrant and diverse spiritual life that encompasses many faiths. Niki Gorick has been photographing London for over 20 years and has established a reputation for capturing the true character of the city, which is certainly evident in the images in the Faith in the City exhibition. Her photographs have been exhibited throughout London, including at the Barbican and the National Maritime Museum. She was artist in residence at the Guildhall Library from 2013 to 2015. The exhibition features a diverse range of images, from weddings, communions and livery company carol services to Knights Templar investitures and Afghan music. The photographs show an extraordinary range of spiritual activities and compelling personalities. As Chair of Culture in the City, I remain optimistic about the future of the cultural sector in London and the UK. We are continually considering what we can do within the current restrictions to deliver a culturally engaging programme of work that supports our confidence in London's continued success as a cultural powerhouse. I hope many of you will be able to come and visit the exhibition and see the images in person. Today, we are fortunate to be joined by representatives from 4 faiths who are going to give us an insight into how they have responded to the pandemic and learn of their vision for the future of the city. It's now my pleasure to hand over to Niki to introduce the panellists. I hope that you enjoy the discussion and look forward to seeing you in the city. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon and welcome. It's lovely to have you all here for the discussion, and thank you for joining us. A particular welcome to our panellists. We're very lucky today to have with us Bishop Sarah Mullally, the Bishop of London, and we have Rabbi Shalom Morris from Bevis Synagogue, and we also have Shaykh Yunus Dudhwala, who is the head of chaplaincy at Barts Health NHS Trust, and Mandip Singh from the city Sikh community. So welcome all. And yes, there we are. Hello. Welcome. So when I was photographing and creating the book for the exhibition, I gained a wonderful insight into the very diverse spiritual life of the City of London and the ways of worship in the different faith communities. And as we come through this very difficult time of the COVID-19 pandemic, I thought for this discussion, it would be a good idea to explore how different faith communities have responded here in the city and what the challenges have been. And also we can move on then to talk about looking ahead and what kind of future that we might want for our world, our communities and our society, and perhaps look at what the different faiths can offer as a vision for the City of London. So to start off with, let's explore how your particular faith communities have experienced COVID-19. I'll come to each of you in turn, if that's okay. But Bishop Sarah, perhaps I can start with you. Can you tell me what you think have been the practical and spiritual needs of all those who work and live and visit the city, and how your Christian faith community has been addressing these needs?
Well, thank you, Niki, and thank you for such a wonderful exhibition. It's a real reminder to me of the other faith communities in the city. It's been a joy to look at. Well, the truth is we've been in the midst of a storm with COVID-19, haven't we? And, you know, it's been the greatest public health challenge that we've ever faced. You know, the care system has been stretched but not broken. And also it's been a reminder that, in a sense, the burden of COVID-19 has fallen on some of the most vulnerable in our society, those that are older, those with disabilities, and those that are public facing. And of course, we've had our own anxieties, questions about how long this will go on for, how we will survive it. And of course, they're the questions that face us as Christians, as they do of anybody of any other faith. And one of the real joys is that in the heart of all of our communities and that of the city, there is faith. And that is true of the Christian church. And so our churches in the city, in a sense, have stepped up and stepped out into our community. And whilst for a time we weren't able to worship in our buildings, our churches continued to worship. So many of the churches went online and either offered online worship or a telephone service. But also our churches have provided that very practical support. So they have provided soup kitchens, they have provided lunches. There is even one church just slightly out of the city, but they packed PPE for the NHS. So they provided very practical care as well. And so there is a sense for me that the church has been providing soup and soap. And
do you think people have adapted quite well to worship online, or has there been difficulties?
It was, I think we're naturally communities of faith, and therefore not meeting in person has been a real sense of grief for us. And so at the beginning, it was a very hard thing to do. But what I have found is that there are some communities that have really flourished because of it. So, for example, those that would normally travel into the city but are working at home, they can get access online, even at home, to the worship in the city. So in fact, connectivity for some of our churches in the city have actually flourished because of going online, because people not traveling in have been able to do it. And also it's enabled people to meet in small groups, whereas they might not have done. They wouldn't have come out for a small Bible study in an evening on a wet night, but they would go online. So actually there have been some positives for it. But there is no doubt that it was a joy when we were able to go safely back into our buildings. And very much what we've now got is a sort of mixed environment. There are those that are online and in their churches. There are some that are only online, and there are some that are only in their churches. So we've got a very mixed world at the moment. And for me, it's just been amazing how people have adapted and taken on skills that they would never have dreamt doing this time last year.
Yes, it's been a big change. Shaykh, Yunus, you had Ramadan right in the middle of the early part of the lockdown, and you're also involved with the NHS. How has the Muslim community been coping?
First of all, thank you, Niki, for your wonderful photographs, and they look absolutely amazing, especially capturing the different communities. From the Muslim community, I think we had a large number of deaths because of the comorbidities that are found within the Muslim community. And also working in the NHS for myself, it was extremely intense in March, April, beginning of May, and then it calmed down. And as you say, Ramadan was right in the middle of this pandemic, and Muslims who are practicing Muslims will be praying 5 times a day. Those who might not be practicing become more practicing in the month of Ramadan. So that spirituality, the connection that they wanted and that they normally have with the mosques was broken. However, as Bishop Sarah mentioned, everything went online. So the 5 times daily prayer we couldn't do online. You have to do that physically. So those were happening at home. But the sermons and messages of hope, of reminders of what this pandemic might, the lessons we might learn from this. And then the mosques were running lots of food banks and food parcels to the NHS. They were preparing lots of funerals. So all of this happening either virtually or at the mosques themselves. But I think one of the things that we missed as a Muslim community was that sense of community that we have when we break the fast together, when we pray together. And I think once the mosques reopened on the 4th of July, it was like Independence Day here.
Yes. So you managed to maintain some sense of community online, but you found since the mosques opened, have you been able to get a much bigger, greater connectivity going?
Yeah. Although, because of the numbers that we normally get, so Friday prayers is the most populated prayer that we have the most congregants. And because of the number that we have, instead of having just one congregation, we're having to do 3, 4, 5 different congregations. But again, the community I've seen when the days were quite hot of a month ago, they were lining up with umbrellas in the heat, so that they save themselves from the heat. And last week I saw them lining up with umbrellas because of the rain.
Because of the rain, yeah.
From the Muslim community to bring that community together.
Great, great. And coming to you, Rabbi Morris, is the synagogue still shut? I mean, how has the Jewish community been coping?
So first of all, thank you. It's really wonderful to be here with you and with all of my other colleagues. The beginning was, as ever for everyone, was incredibly difficult. I mean, I remember April, I think I officiated at 10 funerals. You know, it was day after day. I mean, that was really very hard. You know, families couldn't attend. We're officiating over Zoom. So just strange and you know, very difficult times. You know, but also as a faith leader of a bricks and mortar, you know, site in the city of London, as you mentioned, you know, we obviously had to close. And that was actually a matter of real concern for my community. One of the unique features of Bevis Synagogue was built in 1701, and it's never shuttered.
Never shut, absolutely.
Through the Blitz, you know, through the centuries. I mean, it's a real testament to London and its inclusivity. It's probably the longest continuously worshipped in synagogue in the world. And that was something that really the community felt very deeply of, oh my gosh, is this the first time we're going to close? So I actually made the point to actually come by myself to the synagogue every single day. During lockdown, I live very close by, and was able to pray here each day. And that, I think, brought a measure of comfort to the community. And something that I think was really interesting, and I imagine others have had a similar experience, is that I learned that I couldn't take any relationships for granted anymore. You know, so many relationships were based on, you see them in synagogue, you see them at prayers, you see them at an event. And so your relationship is just based on, hey, how you doing? Catching up in that manner. And I couldn't do that anymore. And so it meant that if you wanted to maintain a relationship, you had to reach out, you had to make a phone call, you had to connect with one another. And so, for example, throughout the lockdown, I made mini videos about the synagogue. Right. Over 30 of them that, you know, on the history, on the neighborhood, about the unique customs of the community, as a way for people to feel connected. And amazingly, it feels almost as if people feel even more connected now than they did beforehand. And that's been really inspiring and beautiful to appreciate how much people, I think, have come to appreciate the role of a faith community has in their life, really, whether or not they are particularly religious themselves or not, but appreciating that a synagogue and other houses of worship are more than just a place of prayer, but they really are a place of community and belonging and connecting. And I think that's one of the perhaps positives,
yes,
that have come out of this experience of a greater appreciation of what we have and what we need to hold on to if we want to have it.
Absolutely. Well, thank goodness there have been some positives. Mandip, presumably you were no longer able to pray in the Bedouin tent where I photographed you at the Centre of Reconciliation and Peace, but have you managed to maintain some form of community and prayers online for the Sikhs?
Yes, Niki. I mean, what's really been striking is that the number of people who've now taken to go online and to either offer prayer or collective prayer, or to do seminars or workshops or whatever you like, and that's been led by, you know, in some part Gurdwaras, but a lot of the congregation individually have taken it upon themselves to actually do that themselves. And there is a plethora of groups that I've constantly been invited to join, who do this now. So the prayers that we used to do on a lunchtime in the city, they're now being done online. Some will do them early in the morning, some are doing it at lunchtime, some are doing it in the evening, along with other things. So it's been quite interesting to see how that's developed. And it's actually more, I would say, the congregation, the individuals themselves are taking it upon themselves to do something. And I think that goes back to a lot of what many of the other participants have been saying, is that, when we're having prayer, I suppose this is the case with most faiths, is that there's four elements. There's the individual element, there's the communal element of prayer and worship and spirituality, then there's a community aspect part, then finally there's the service aspect, service to the community part. So by this lockdown, we've obviously lost the communal part quite a lot, and that's been very, very striking. But individually, people have tried to continue that on through these online forums. And I suppose the other thing is that they've tried to continue the service piece as well, because as you well know, gurdwaras are quite well known for producing langar, and a lot of the gurdwaras had closed. So what's happened is that a lot of them have repurposed the kitchens because they already have kitchen capacity to make hot meals, and they produce these hot meals which go out to hospitals, to local food banks, to the homeless in the city, and so those kind of activities have continued to carry on. It's quite interesting because I'm also part of another organisation called Gurdwara Aid, and we carried out a survey of gurdwaras in the UK who were still open, and the results indicated that about half the gurdwaras in the UK were doing this. They had repurposed their kitchens, and we estimated that was producing something like 90,000 hot meals a day, which is quite a staggering number around the country. Fantastic. So these are kind of responses that we're seeing, which is actually quite amazing to understand that. So it's been absolutely fantastic to see what's happened, and we're a new world. People are thinking of new ways to work and how to adapt themselves, and even religious services that we were doing in the past have changed quite dramatically. With the opening of places of worship, of course, lots of restrictions have come in which govern how we worship, I suppose. But again, it's nice. It's good to see that places of worship and gurdwaras are adapting and working within those guidelines.
Gosh, so from what you're all saying is, I mean, you've all adapted very cleverly, really, and repurposed various parts, and the community might even have come a little more together, which is nice to hear. So looking ahead at the future of the city, I mean, we're obviously coming through COVID-19, I hope. So I'd like to sort of move on and perhaps ask you all, what does your faith say about a vision for the City of London? Perhaps I could come to you, Rabbi Morris, first. What are your hopes for the future?
So I had this amazing experience, during lockdown. After, thankfully, the funeral part concluded, I started getting phone calls from some of our young members informing me that they're expecting. I kept getting these phone calls about people expecting. And so we're expecting a bit of a baby boom in the months ahead. Probably the first time in a generation in this historic synagogue for there to be so many children born into the community. Over July and August, we had 5 weddings in the synagogue, including my own, actually.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so there's been this sense of, this is a place of life as well, in addition to a place of work. And I really see that as the future of the city, that the city is more than a place to earn a livelihood. It's also a place to live and a place to be inspired as well. And it has tremendous capacity to do that for so many people. And so here at the synagogue, we're actually in the process of building a visitor center together with the National Lottery Heritage Fund, where people will be able to come and learn about the synagogue and learn about the history of diversity in the City of London, learn about Judaism. And as we look forward, it's about all of these opportunities that we have, that our places of worship can be broader, can really be these big tent that allow people to come in and to enjoy these spaces in a variety of ways and to become part of these communities. What I'll say is actually just one matter of concern, that we have, and I wonder if this is shared by, by my colleagues, is actually the concern about congestion charge. The congestion charge has been extended to the weekends and to the evenings, and placed a really difficult challenge for houses of worship in the city that are already relatively small. And with the challenges of COVID, where now it makes it even more difficult, for our members to come and to participate. And I think that's a real concern, that if we want to encourage, these places of worship and religious life in the city, then there needs to be some kind of exemption which is made so that people can participate in religious life in the city and not be limited, by additional restrictions.
Gosh, well, I hadn't considered that. Yes, maybe they will have to work something out there. Coming to you, Bishop Sarah, I mean, I don't know whether you're expecting a baby boom in the Christian community, but what are your hopes for the future, your vision for the city?
One of the things about faith is all faiths have at its heart hope, and for the Christian faith, hope is about what God did in the past in Jesus Christ, that points to a future without COVID-19 and without death and dying and pain. But the reality is it holds us here fast and secure. And I actually don't think COVID-19, we haven't passed through it yet. It's going to be for a little while. And so for me, what hope looks like in the immediate present is the nurse who continues to go into work despite the fears for her children. It looks like those that are out collecting food for the food bank. It's those that pick up the telephone to those that they haven't seen before. And my hope for the city is that we continue to build on that community and that interconnectedness. So I see we're taught within the Christian place to seek the well-being of the city. And my belief is that the well-being of the city is not about our finance institutions, it's about our community. So I hope that that community that has begun to grow and knit together, that we will see that blossoming in the future, really. And that's not just about the Christian faith, it's about between those of other faiths, and it's of those of none. So that's my hope, is that we see this community that has begun to be established to grow, and those that have been most affected by COVID-19, that we care for them. So those that are homeless, those that are least able to support themselves financially. And what I recognise, and you've heard it here this evening, that actually those from ethnic minority groups have been more adversely affected by COVID-19, which is why actually we have to embrace the diversity of the city and to care for them. So in a sense, that's my hope for the future.
Wonderful. Well, let's hope that happens. And I mean, Yunus, do you have sort of similar hopes that your own community can get back and grow?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the city is known for its wealth. That's what the City of London is mainly known for. But its health or the lack of health, or this virus that has brought the city to its knees. And I think my hope is, in terms of spirituality, that sometimes wealth, and it's in all faith communities, that we know that wealth can be helpful, but it can also be destructive. And the amount of wealth that you have sometimes distracts you and takes you away from understanding yourself and understanding others, and hopefully looking at the benefits of this virus, because obviously it's been devastating for many of us, and especially those who've lost their loved ones and those who have died. It's been traumatic. However, my hope is that through this virus, the concentration towards wealth will become slightly less, and the concentration towards health might increase. And it's not only our physical health, but our spiritual health, because this virus has brought to the fore a sense of understanding our vulnerability, understanding our mortality, understanding that we, despite our wealth, do not have so much power. I mean, you look at how much wealth the most powerful countries in the world have, and yet they were brought to their knees. So hopefully, my hope is that this virus brings people together, helps people understand themselves, helps people understand others, and in this new world, we look forward to enhancing our spirituality within the spaces of faith that we have in the city.
In the city, yes. And Mandip, do you have similar hopes that within the City of London, people can move forward much more positively once we've shaken off COVID-19?
I do, and you know, COVID has been, it's a bleak and stark reminder of, as Yunus has said, of how vulnerable we are. But it's also, there's also a silver lining there, I believe. It's a double-sided, double-edged sword. And I think the reason for the real success in the city has been an underpinning of the faith that sits underneath all of that. And the people who run the corporations have got faith quite strong in their lives, and which is what I've seen as I've worked in the city a long time. So my hopes really, you know, from our perspectives, is there's, you know, that we hope there's more collaboration between the different faith groups, more places that we can have for worship and prayer that can be opened up, made available to faiths, especially those faiths who have no abode in the city. And then fourthly, secondly, I suppose, is I believe that people who work in the city may be turning more towards faith now, and I really hope that faith gives them a moral value in doing business with the world and keeping the position of the city as a world-leading financial centre. Those would be my hopes after this.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sure and hope that all your hopes will be brought to fruition. I'm going to bring the discussion to an end there, but thank you very, very much. It's been fascinating hearing all your different views, but I think you're all actually, if I can use a religious term, singing from the same hymn sheet. You know, you're all moving in the right direction, and hopefully you can work together to help your various communities. So I also hope for all of you who've tuned in that this has helped you reflect on your own spiritual life, how it's been affected by the experience of the pandemic and how you might move forward. Also hope you can get hold of a copy of the book, Faith in the City of London, and also do come along and see the outside exhibition in Paternoster Square, or when it moves to Aldgate Square. It's on for a couple of months up until the 27th of November. So thank you very much again to Bishop Sarah and Rabbi Morris, Shaykh Yunus and Mandip Singh. And thank you everyone else for joining us. Have a lovely afternoon.